Hello, it's Gail here from 3 Wise Crafters and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how to make these 3 cards using Pinkfresh Studio products from their latest release in April. So the first card, my daughter who's 9 years old did the stenciling, and this last card was just something that I wanted to try. So I have the Never Give Up stamp set here, and I'm also using the coordinating dies, as well as the layering stencils, which is a 4 stencil set, the press plate, which you can also do hot foiling with, and then I have the diagonal press plate here as well. I was going to use just the plaid plate that you can see now, but I ended up having enough backgrounds for what I wanted to do. So here I'm just using Express It tape on Hammermill 100-pound cardstock, and I'm just sticking that to the platen. I have Spellbinder's Better Press black ink here, and I'm just swishing that back and forth on the press plate, and doing that gives you a better coverage than pouncing it up and down like you would on a stamp. So I find that the Hammermill cardstock works okay. It doesn't give you the letterpress impression that you might be going for, but it still covers your cardstock with the press plate in the way that you want it to. So I've just showed you StazOn cleaner and archival cleaner. You can use either of those to clean your press plates with if you're using Better Press ink or archival inks, and that'll clean off the inks for you really well. And then I'm just putting some on my cloth and cleaning off the magnetic plate as well. And you'll see me here use the Spellbinder's Mister Spray just to give the press plate a clean, as well as the magnetic plate, because the StazOn and the archival ink cleaners end up leaving an oily residue, so you just want to make sure that you clean that off both your press plate and your magnetic plate. So I have Altenew Enchanted Gold Pigment ink, and I'm using that now on our press plate, and I absolutely love this ink pad. So if you've never tried the Enchanted Gold Pigment ink from Altenew, I highly recommend it. I only got it last week and I absolutely love it, and you'll see me use it a fair bit in my videos from now on. So I'm using that to do one of our flower impressions, and as you can see here, it works really well, and that's just again on Hammermill 100-pound cardstock. And you can see the shimmery shine there if you turn it in the right light. In real life, if you have this ink and you use it, you'll be able to see the shimmery shine for yourself. And to clean off the press plate with the pigment ink, all you need to do is use some water in a spray bottle and it cleans it off really well. So I have the diagonal plaid plate here, and I am using Ballet Slipper and Soft Lilac for our first card panel, and I'm using the Ballet Slipper first. So I'm just applying that onto our press plate, and you'll see that I've skipped ahead a little bit because I didn't think you'd want to watch me just applying ink. So this is the 100-pound Hammermill cardstock again, and I'm finding that I'm using this cardstock a lot more now. All of the supplies used in today's video are listed in the video description below, so make sure that you check that out. So I've just rotated our press plate 90 degrees, and I am using the Soft Lilac ink pad from Pinkfresh. And here you have that two-toned plate effect on your card panel, and it looks really pretty. So I have another panel here, and I'm just using the Ballet Slipper on this one, and I'm using the 100-pound Hammermill cardstock again. So I've rotated I've left the plate, in the same position, and now I'm going to mask off certain areas because I wanted to add a different effect to our card panel, but using the same press plate. And you'll see me here mask off for a certain line on the press plate, and I'll mask off the whole press plate and just cover it with ink to get a pattern with the same line thickness. So I do end up skipping ahead here so that you just see how I have masked off the press plate. I didn't think you'd want to watch me mask it all off. So here you can see how I've masked it off, and I'm using the Altenew Enchanted Gold Pigment ink again. Now this took me a little bit to cover the press plate, but it is worth the effect that you get on your card panel. And the same with the tape. You can see that I used a lot of tape here to do the masking. It does take a fair bit of tape to stick. It didn't stick to the magnetic plate, and it doesn't really stick well to the press plate either. So bear with it and take your time, but you will get there with a bit of persistence. So here I just take off that masking. You can see now the gold effect on the press plate. And when I run that through the die cutting machine, you can see how you get that gold effect on your card panel. So I've rotated my press plate 90 degrees again. Don't rotate your cardstock, it doesn't work as well. And I'm just using the Ballet slipper here too. I found if I rotated the cardstock, even using a 6x6 cardstock, it didn't work as well, especially with the hot foiling. So here I have done the Ballet slipper for our rotation of our press plate, and I'm just doing the same thing. I've masked off our press plate and doing the gold lines as I did before. And I really loved the effect that this did on the card panel, even though it took a bit of work to mask it all off. And I just love that effect on our card panel. So with a bit of time, you'd be able to do that as well. You just need to take your time, especially putting down the masking tape. It does shift and you just need to persist with it, but it does give you a great effect. So now here you can see there's a change in hands. This is my 9-year-old daughter, and she is using she's using Lavender for the first color here. And this is from Pinkfresh Studio. So she loves stenciling, so she asked if she could do one of the card panels here with the stenciling, and she chose these colors herself. And she also chose the colors of Ballet Slipper and Soft Lilac for the background that she wanted on her card. So she's using quite a light hand here, and she ends up going back quite a bit. So I did speed up the video so that you weren't having to watch her take her time. And now I'm just cleaning off the stencil for her with some rubbing alcohol, and that's Isocol, and I just get that from my local supermarket in Australia. So my daughter's not great at lining up the stencils. She did a pretty good job with lining this one up, but she did ask me to line up the rest for her. So this next one she's using Candy Violet. And these color combinations, when they dry back, they're really, really pretty. And her reaction at the end of all of this stenciling was absolutely priceless. I wish I could have left it in the video for you. So she's just applying that Candy Violet down. And then for her flowers, she ended up choosing the Ballet Slipper. And she chose that so that it would tie in with her background panel that she had asked me to do for her. So she's not up to putting all the card together at this stage. She would like to, but she feels that she's not confident enough. So she asked me to put the card together for her, but she told me what she wanted to be done. So she goes back in a fair bit with her colours, and you can see how pretty that's starting to look. So this next colour is the Regal Kiss from Pinkfresh. And she already knows how to show the colours in the video. So this is quite a deep purple, but when it dries back, it's really tones down, especially over the other ink colors. So here she's using Apricot, and she's going to do that on the flower centers. And once she's finished with the flower centers, we'll move on to the leaves. So this is stencil number 4 that my daughter's doing at the moment. We missed the first stencil, which is actually this one now, the leaf stencil. I tend to leave the leaves till last, and it doesn't matter what order you go in with the stencils, you can line these up really easy. So my daughter's using key lime now, and with the way that she's applying the ink, she's only used the one green colour, and it's still given different shading on those leaves because in some areas she actually applied it heavy, and in others she applied it light. So you can use the same ink colour to get shading. It just depends on how heavy your hand is when you're applying that ink. So she goes back and forth and finishes off that card panel, and then her reaction was, "Oh, I really like it. It's really pretty. I wish I had my own supplies, Mum." So now I'm back doing the stenciling, and here I'm using the Berrylicious for my first ink colour, and I'm just applying that down. Now, if the speed of the video in some of the stenciling is too fast for you, you can use your settings button on the YouTube video, and you can either slow down or speed up the video. Now, if you do that, I do recommend that you turn your volume down or completely mute it. Otherwise, you're going to have a very, very funny sounding voice in speaking to you at the same time. Although that might be quite funny actually to listen to. So here for those little flowers, I have used Coral Reef. So I've stayed in the same 4 colour set here from Pinkfresh Studio. And this layer here is called Berrylicious on our bigger flowers. So this is stencil number 3. And now this, we're doing the flower centers with the apricot, sorry. And I'm just applying that really quickly to the flower centers. And I tried to use as many inks as what my daughter had done as well, but I did want different flower colors. So here I'm using Candy Apple, and I must say when I finished the inking on these larger flowers, I absolutely love how these turned out. They are so pretty. So now for the leaves, I'm using 2 inks here. The first one is Key Lime, which is what my daughter also used. So I could have just gone back in with Key Lime and added a heavier hand to create some shading, but I thought it'd be nice just to add a different colour and get a completely different look on this card panel to what my daughter had done. So now I'm using Emerald City, and it's sort of a greenish blue colour side of the family. And I really like how this looks on the finished card panel here. So I actually did 2 of these card panels, but I did the second one off screen so that you didn't have to watch the same things again. So the other thing that you can do with the settings button on YouTube is change the quality of the video. YouTube automatically puts your videos at standard definition. You can change that to high definition. So you just saw the finished card panel there, and I absolutely love how this second card turned out. So now I'm just using Spellbinder's masking tape here, and I'm just creating a pattern on our cardstock with different measurements. So the top is about 1/2 inch, and then I've gone up about 1 inch from the bottom, and the sides, when you see me do the side, that's 1/2 inch as well, and there's about 3/4 of an inch gap that I've left there for our ink blending. And I've done that on the right hand side of our card panel as well. And then I'll come back and I'll do the middle. Unfortunately, I forgot to turn the video back on when I did the ink blending for the left and the right hand side. But you can see here for the middle panel that I am using milled lavender for our first colour. Then I'm using Dusty Concord. So I apologise that you didn't get to see the first ink blending with the left and the right hand side. So I'm really sorry about that. So now our next layer is Seedless Preserves. And I just go back and forth and blend this in. And I did that for the left and the right hand side as well. I'm just cleaning off the brush after using the Seedless Preserve before I go to the milled lavender. Now these colours, when they dry, really blend in pretty. It looks very bright on the card panel, especially with the ink that's sitting on top of the tape. But it looks really nice. So just when you peel your tape off, make sure that you peel it back on a bit of an angle, and that reduces the risk of tearing your cardstock. So I loved how this looked, and then I thought it would look so pretty in oranges, give that sunset effect. And this card was really simple to make. It was just working out your measurements for the masking that took a little bit of time. But otherwise, it was really easy to do that card panel. So now I've got my Misty out, and I'm just lining up the Never Give Up stamp here, where I want it to go on that card panel. So I've just given the ink time to dry. I don't want to stamp straight over the top of wet ink. So I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black here. I love this ink for stamping. It gives a very detailed impression, and I usually only have to cover my stamp once, and I did not condition this stamp at all, but you'll see that the stamped impression turns out really well without me having to condition the stamp or go back in and restamp it. And I'm just rubbing my hand over it. I'm not very strong, so I'm just rubbing it back and forth just to make sure that I have an even coverage of the ink. So you can see there how that has stamped on our card panel, and I'm just using the Lawn Fawn shimmy here just to clean off my stamp, and I don't need to use any other products to clean off the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. It works really well. So I'm just putting my sentiment here, and I'm just using the word thanks today. I need some thank you cards, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to turn some of these cards into thank you cards. So once we've done the sentiment on here, this card panel is actually finished, and all we need to do then is put it on our card base. And I only needed to do that sentiment once as well. And again, I'm just using the VersaFine Onyx Black. It is brilliant for sentiments. It gives a really detailed effect, especially for those finer sentiments that are coming out now. So here I've trimmed down one of our card panels that we made earlier with the diagonal press plate. And this is for my daughter's stenciling of the flowers that she had done. And I've just got some scrap pale pink cardstock. It's almost a salmon, to just add a bit of effect and cover up the lines between the two card panels. And I've just trimmed down a Hammermill A2 card panel, and I've taken an inch off it, so it's 3 1/4 wide, and our plaid piece is 1 inch wide. So I was just lining everything up there so I could work out where I wanted my sentiment to go, and I'm just using the word thanks again, and sorry you saw my head a little bit then, and using the VersaFine Onyx Black ink again, and we can easily stamp our sentiment onto our card panel. And once we've done that, we can set that aside and we can do a little bit more stamping for our other card. So I'm just using the inch scrap piece of card that was off that original A2 panel that I had trimmed down to 3 1/4. Sorry, I think I gave you the wrong measurements before. So the panel was 3 1/4. And the plaid was still 1 inch. So I'm using the sentiment here, never give up on the things that make you smile. And I'm using the Altenew Enchanted Gold Pigment ink just to tie that in with our diagonal plaid background that we did earlier with the gold effect for some of the lines that are on it. So I did end up stamping this twice just to make sure that there was an even coverage. I probably didn't need to, once was enough, and I didn't condition any of these stamps at all. So pigment ink's great for conditioning your stamps, and I loved how this turned out. It has a shimmery effect to your sentiment, sort of like what you get with embossing powder that has a little bit of shimmer to it. And now I'm just lining up the coordinating die. And the good thing about Pinkfresh dies are that it cuts it all out in one piece, but it also cuts out little bits for you so that it looks like you've got the leaves are separated from the flowers a bit. Normally they're all joined in and you've got these big white gaps on a card background. So I'm just using Nina Solar White in 110 pounds. I use this for my card bases just because it's thick and it's sturdy. And it can take a fair bit of weight on it as well. So I'm just using the score buddy here to score my card panel. And I'm just scoring it so that it's 4 1/4 inches wide. And it's 5 1/2 long. So standard A2 size for the US. In Australia we tend to do a lot more A6 sizes, but I tend to make a lot of A2 size cards. So here I'm just going to put our card together. While I had the die cutting machine out, I did all the die cutting that I needed with the flowers that we're using today. And I'm just using Gina K designed Connect glue here in a fine tip bottle. And my bottle's from Couture Creations and it works just as well as any of the other fine tip bottles that are out there on the market. So here I've lined up our diagonal plaid piece that's 1 inch wide. And now I will put down some more Connect glue on this card panel. And I will line that up with our plaid piece on our card base. Now this is really easy to do. Once you've got one corner lined up and you line up the long side, it will fall into place. Sometimes our card stock might be cut a little bit wrong and you might just need to trim it a little bit to make it all even, but it's not too hard with a guillotine if you've got one. So now I'm just using some Connect glue on this thin strip. This is 1/8 of an inch wide, this strip, and it's just some scrap paper that I've got. And it's sort of a pink, but more of a pinky, peachy, I don't know, it's not completely pink. There's sort of an orange tone to it. But it tones in well with the colour of our ink that we've used. So I'm just using some foam squares here, and they're from Scrapbook Adhesives, and that pack has large squares and smaller squares in it, and I've just put those all over our flower arrangement. And I do trim some of these, cut them down in size so that I can get them onto a stem. And in areas that the squares themselves are actually too wide to go, some of the leaves are a little bit thinner, and I have a tendency to over adhere, and I just wanted the flower arrangement to be well supported. So I've taken all those backing bits off camera, and now I'm just lining it up where I'd like it on the card panel. So this is the stenciling that my daughter did, and she chose those colours for the plaid background as well. So she was really happy with how this finished card turned out, and she said that she wanted to make more cards with Mum, but she needed her own supplies, or she wanted to make more cards for Mum. So here I'm doing an easy background. I found this one was probably the easiest and the quickest one out of all of the cards that I created. And all I'm doing is putting some glue onto the A2 card panel. And I've just sped that up, cut a lot out so you didn't need to see me putting all the glue down. And I'm just lining that up as I do with all of my card panels on my card base. I go for the top left hand corner, and then I go on our fold. And once you've got that long side lined up, it makes it so much easier. And if you use glue, you've got that little bit of wriggle room to be able to move your card panel if you haven't lined it up very well. So here's that finished card, and I loved how that turned out. So now I'm just die cutting the sentiment. I needed that pigment ink to dry, so I'm just using my small Tim Holtz Sidekick cutting machine here, but I can't wait for the Spellbinder Scout to come out. It's a bit wider. It's a 3.5 inch wide opening for you to run the plates through. So I think for me, sitting at my desk with everything else that's around me, will work really well. So I loved how this die cut out. So now we're using the flower arrangements that I did the stenciling for, and I'm just arranging that on my card panel that we used the diagonal press plate for, and did the gold impressions with the Ballet slipper. So I wanted to cover the whole card panel, but I wasn't sure how I wanted these to go on that background. So I liked how that looked. So you'll see here that I'll put foam squares on one panel and leave the other one sitting there just so I can place this one, the bottom one down, sorry, once I've got all those foam squares on. Now you will see that I had put too many foam squares on, especially for the pieces that were hanging off our card, especially on the stem of the flower down on the bottom left hand side of our card panel. It ends up sticking to my craft desk. So you can either put the foam squares everywhere and then trim it off, or put the foam squares on the main pieces that are on your card panel and then just add in your foam squares where you need to for the pieces around the edge. So I've put the foam squares on the top flower arrangement, and I'm just sticking that to our card panel. And you could see there that it got stuck to my desk. And now you can see all the foam squares that are hanging off the edge as well. And all of these get stuck to my scissors. My scissors are not are quite gluey, and they're not non-stick, so I need to get a pair of non-stick scissors. It would make my life so much more easier. So here I'll just trim all of this down. I ended up skipping some of that out. You can see what the process is, and it's easy to line that up on the card. and I loved how that looked. And I thought our sentiment was well suited to the middle. So I'm just using foam squares. The foam squares that I'm using are 1 mil or 0.04 of an inch thick. And I wanted the sentiment to be a little bit higher than what our flower arrangements were. So I'm just doubling up those foam squares onto our card panel. So once I've got the last one on and I've taken all the backers on, we can stick that to our card. And I just thought that that sentiment looked really well with this floral arrangement. So now I'm just using Gina K Connect Glue, and I'm just applying that onto our A2 card panel, and I'll stick that to our card base. So again, just lining up that corner and the long edge and dropping it into place. So I really enjoyed making my card, and I know my daughter enjoyed making hers. I hope you have enjoyed watching the video just as much as we did enjoy creating it for you. And if you did, make sure that you give the video a big thumbs up and that you subscribe to the channel. All the supplies used in the video are listed in the description below. Thank you for watching.